Okay, Adam.
Hi Rob, how are you? Ava here.
Hi, Ava.
Brilliant. So I might start the introduction and then we can kickstart the talk.
Sure.
So hi everybody, my name is Ava Flynn and I am the secretary for this year's Translational Medicine Society. So I would like to welcome our next speaker of the day, Dr. Robert O'Connor, and to just also say a massive thank you to Rob as well for all of his help and enthusiasm for making this conference happen. So Dr. O'Connor is the Director of Research at Irish Cancer Society, Ireland's largest cancer charity. So Dr. O'Connor's work really has shown the integration of translational medicine within cancer research, and this can largely be seen through his work with Cancer Trials Ireland. So as Dr. O'Connor will mention, there is massive scope for translational medicine in cancer research, and he will make this very apparent in his talk. So I will now pass you on to Robert, who will be speaking about breaking down the barriers in translational research. And we will have a few questions at the end then in the last 5 minutes or so.
Great. Thanks very much, Ava. And Ava, if you wouldn't mind, you might give me a nod after about 20 minutes, just so we try and keep the time and allow for a few questions. I do like to hear questions, so keep them coming in. Huge work of thanks to Ava, of course, to Emer, Maeve, Kira, and the rest of the team. Truly amazing achievement to pull together. So the guys asked me to kind of give a little bit of background on myself and how I got into this from the very start and stuff. So we'll kind of kick off there, although we won't spend too much time. So a little bit about me. I suppose I'd always been interested in science, and when I was younger, that was primarily anything to do with kind of biology and astronomy, actually, although I don't get a chance to mix that into things too much these days.
Is that okay? All right, okay.
Could we maybe mute? Yeah. We mute others there. Thanks. So I had an average country boy education from Wexford, from a small village there, and I never knew anybody actually that had been to college other than my teachers. So I didn't really know anything about health or research or anything like that. And I really do feel very privileged, not just for the invitation today, but really to have gotten to where I am and that. So I suppose not knowing anything about that, I suppose that's the first barrier. I crossed that one. Talking a little bit about barriers. So I suppose in terms of my academic bits and pieces, as it were, I went to UCD and did a broad course there, pharmacology, microbiology, and chemistry. And that was at 17. So a country boy moves to the big smoke, as it were. These are very broad, practical and quite intense practical subjects. So I suppose that gave a very broad background. Moved over to DCU for my postdoc, and that was also quite intense. Working on an Irish leprosy drug, and there's a bit of a Cork link in there as well. Probably one of the early examples of translational research in Ireland. A drug developed in the 1950s by Dr. Vincent Barry, Barry being a very common surname, as many of you know, down in Cork. He was from Cork. And I joined kind of the tail end of that, a different thread of the project. The postdoc then, after that in DCU, really focused, I suppose, initially on cell models of cancer and then into clinical trials. And I was involved in a lot of other stuff as well, biosafety, national cancer research, ethics, various things and stuff like that. And I got the title of Senior Program Leader in Translational Cancer Pharmacology, and then on as a lecturer in the School of Nursing. And in 2015, I joined the Irish Cancer Society. So I thought maybe we talk about translational, but actually probably need to start with a little bit of a definition. We're all kind of scientists, we like definitions and that. And really when you try and do it, it's probably more definition by exclusion, because it's easier to say what it is rather than maybe to define it. So it is applied. It makes use of existing knowledge and skills and applies them in new ways. It is always multidisciplinary. You don't have a translational single science. You don't have a chemist or a biochemist or whatever. It's always about multidisciplinary. It's always about teams, people, skills, and personalities. And it looks to solve a problem. This is where we get this term from bench to bedside. It's identifying a health problem and then how can we find a solution for that? This is a major tenet of our one of our 4 pillars of investment in research in the Irish Cancer Society. So we have a lot more details on our website for people that are putting in research calls and that. And actually, one of the visuals my colleague Rachel kind of pulled up, when you go into research, translational research, you can actually see there's even sub areas kind of in there and things that have been defined. So if you do a quick Google for on cancer.ie for translational, you'll come up with this if it's of any use. So how did I get into this? So obviously, as I said, pharmacology is an applied science. It is about looking at solutions, looking at how different sciences kind of come together. So I suppose one of the barriers has been overcome there already, and that I had a background in a translational field. And that background allowed me to move from a basic lab scientist, somebody who was reasonably good at the HPLC, cell culture and stuff like that, into clinical trials involving real human beings. And I'll tell a little bit of a story about that, how real those human beings actually are. It also allowed me to speak medical dialects, and there are different medical dialects. Even within different aspects of medicine, there are dialects, there just as there are in different aspects of science. So I suppose part of that transition is illustrated by the cover of these papers here. We started out as a team looking at drug resistance, a drug efflux pump. We identified that a relatively common drug could inhibit that. This mechanism was very important in cancer. We looked at it in some animal models, which would be a standard way to progress these things. The first of the clinical trials that I was involved in then looked at a combination within this. And that actually progressed on further and to some other clinical trials that I was involved with as well. I'll briefly mention the reason that it became so personal is one of my colleagues in the lab ended up unbeknown to me on one of the clinical trials that I was involved in, and that really kind of brought it home. That trial involved me talking a lot to oncologists. It was led by Professor John Crown, who was really stirring things up in the country at that time. And it led me to become involved in ICORC, which is now Cancer Trials Ireland, which Ava mentioned. And for 7 years, I was the translational chair within that, trying to bring science and clinicians together. When we started, we had maybe 30 or so patients involved in translational studies, so they were giving samples or whatever. And when I left, and it wasn't due to me, it was due to the team, we were dealing routinely with about 1,400 patients giving samples as part of clinical trials or whatever. And Verena Murphy would have been very important in that. And also much of that work underpinned some very large grant applications, probably tens of millions of research income that came into Ireland, both from Indigenous and from EU grants that kind of enabled this type of activity. When I've been on, and I suppose those skills have allowed me to interact in some other areas as well. So I would have been heavily involved in the promotion of the HPV vaccine, which really is a miracle kind of cancer preventing vaccine, and certainly something that deserves amazing accolades. Because in Ireland alone, 2 to 3 people will die every week from a HPV related cancer, and we now have the potential to prevent those deaths. So to sort of get into the meat of things before I finish up, I just thought I'd give some thoughts on my perspective on translation, both from my own experience and what I've seen as somebody coordinating probably the greatest non-government investment in research in Ireland. So the requirements of being involved in this field, I suppose a few different things. You need to be good at science understanding. So I suppose that you need to have a general understanding so you can talk to others, as well as being able to contribute in your own right as a specialist in whatever field you might be in. Patience and perseverance, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a second, are very important, because this type of work can often, because you can't do it all yourself, you have to work with other people, and other people's agendas may not fully link in with yours. So, you know, you need to be able to persevere and persuade people and work together as a team. My motivation and in the people that I've seen very successful in this field has been to make a difference, to do something that someone would look back and say, wow, that saved my life, or, you know, made things better, or whatever it might be. If I was talking to you guys, I suppose, as students, I would point out that mentorship is incredibly important. Identifying a network, identifying people that will foster your career. And there are plenty of them out there, plenty of people who want you to do better and will do things, will write support letters, etc. So try and link into those, try and recognize that early, and try and find somebody, particularly maybe an academic mentor, that will help foster your career. And it is, as I say, a lot easier. People love to be asked to be able to help in general. Ability to work as a team and project management, I think those are probably self-evident. When I was thinking about the barriers, I remember this little kind of anecdote. This is a picture from the top of Ben Nevis, which is about close to 1,400 meters high. And it reminds me a little bit of my own kind of translational journey. I started out, I was over in Scotland and saw Ben Nevis, said, oh, I'll have a walk up there. And I started out, and I've done a bit of hill walking, nothing too much, but started out, didn't really realize, but knew I wanted to get to the summit. There was a 20-degree temperature difference between where I started and where I finished. And I'm not the fittest of people in the world, so it was quite strenuous. But I suppose I got there, I talked to some other people, they gave me little bits of advice on the way and stuff like that. And I think that's what many of us try and do in this kind of field. We have to remember there is no roadmap for a lot of translational research, but really everybody strays from a roadmap. Each of you, as you go through your careers, will go in lots of different directions that you'd never ever envisaged, and those are good things. Academic output in the translational field takes longer. So I could generate a very good cell culture paper in maybe 9 months, but a translational trial might take 4 to 5 years, and it will still only be maybe one paper. There can be a lot of career instability. I was 15 years on contracts, and I was well looked after by my mentor, by Professor Martin Kleins, but that was still a lot of instability in that. Funding is challenging, but as mentioned earlier by some of the speakers, that's actually getting a bit better. It is improving, and people are looking for solution-focused supports. The ethical, and I saw that as a question there, the ethical and regulatory environment is complex and is underdeveloped here when I look at other countries, particularly the ethical and the ethics application side. The overall governance and oversight of things like biobanks, etc., is underdeveloped here compared to other countries. But that does not mean that you can't continue to keep going in this. You're dependent, as I mentioned, on other people, not just yourself, and that can sometimes mean you need to develop negotiation skills, that you arrive at a joint agreement and you commit to that over a period of time. And as I mentioned, there are different dialects and different understandings, even of some basic scientific terms. So you need to be able to appreciate that as you go in. A lot of opportunities though as well. It is very enjoyable, it is different, it is applied, it is challenging. You don't necessarily sit around, you have a target in sight. I am always continuously learning and using new skills, and certainly that's something that I enjoy in the middle of my life now at this stage. I like working in a team, I like working with people, and a team ethos can really be very supportive. And having a real impact on people, on making a difference in whatever the disease might be. And as I said, I was out for dinner one night with the next colleague from my postgrad years, and she turned around and told me that she had cancer, and went through and that. And then she said she'd been on a clinical trial, and she told me the drugs and the combination, and it was very evident to me that she was on the trial that I had done. And I explained to her, and it just kind of reminded me, and I've actually met people, our family of people who have been on clinical trials, and that really does bring it home that it's not cells or whatever, it's human beings, and I suppose that gave me a great buzz, to be honest, to know that. So to finish up then, where is the sector, where is the industry kind of going? So some kind of final thoughts on this. It's definitely a growing part of science endeavor. You heard Ruth from SFI talking about this, not just in the biomedical and the health area, but in lots of other areas. And research really is a team effort. Science isn't usually anymore about eureka moments, about Archimedes getting up out of the bath on his own and solving the problem of weighing or knowing if the crown was pure gold. It is about team. If you look at any research paper now, they all have multiple people in there. So it really is a team effort. It's multidisciplinary. It's solution focused. So we're trying to this is where the problem is. How do we get to fix that? So you have to be able to work on those. Again, a number of people mentioned this, patients will be closely involved. You won't just be talking to them, they will be partners, and they need to be partners, and you need to be prepared for those conversations. You will not get funding from ourselves in the Cancer Society, from the Health Research Board, unless you have verifiable evidence of patient involvement, and that is the right way to do these things. And increasingly, we're seeing end-to-end solutions emerge. So we're not just seeing somebody develop a drug or a diagnostic, we're seeing a whole integration of that into the healthcare system. So that might be the diagnostics, and I'll finish up with some illustrations on this. I'm not doing too bad on time. I'll finish up with some illustrations on this. If we look at, say, diagnostics for a condition, what we're seeing now, there might be predictive diagnostics for individualization. So what that means is something that says that of the 100 lung cancers you might see, these 10 patients are eligible for your particular drug. So that might be the treatment intervention. There'll usually be some element of monitoring. So is the drug working? Isn't it working? Some sort of support for the doctor and the patient. There might be information around the treatment. It might be referral pathways, etc. And economics are particularly important now, as the costs of the development of treatments are often prohibitive to a health system. And economics is really one of the forefronts of the problems in health these days. So obviously one needs to be able to process the raw data and the technology which underpin all of these. So just some examples as I finish up. So Roche is an old Swiss pharmaceutical company. It's one of the early companies to evolve in this area. Very conservative generally in their approach to things, but they recognized how things were changing. So they went off, they're a wealthy company, they bought Genentech, and they had a whole suite of new and emerging medicines, several of which became real blockbusters. Who do they turn to next? They buy Foundation Medicine. So in a couple of years ago, they bought Foundation Medicine, and Foundation Medicine have technology that focuses on sequencing and identification of actionable targets. So in other words, taking a tumor and identifying which drugs might work against that. And you can see there's a logical partnership there, but it's not just about developing the drug anymore. It's about providing that end-to-end solution for the doctor. Diabetes is a really good area. I did a bit of work with this myself when I was younger as well. A very common challenge for our society and for people in our society. And if you look now, a lot of the new technology is end-to-end solutions. So just pulled a few off the web there. Sugar Shop. So basically you're seeing integration of diagnostics with on-phone technology. If you look at Freestyle Libre, that product now is becoming increasingly seen again in diabetes, and it goes around to basically you scan, you get your blood test result, and it's automatically sending it and uploading it to your doctor. So if there's issues or whatever, and those can be identified. It's no longer, you know, we might have focused maybe on developing the diagnostic in the first place and the challenge and all that, but now, as I said, it's about end-to-end solutions. We see it in technology. Heart irregularities are quite common. A number of different technologies there. Even I have, I'm sure some of you have an Apple Watch, which is monitoring for ECG, and you can just press a button on it and look for irregularities. Now the technology is not fully certified, so it's not used in Europe, but where they're working on is basically linking that to your doctor. So again, if you had a heart condition, certainly the left technology there from Alvacor basically connects in with your doctor. So you can be sitting at home unaware, and you might get a phone call from your doctor to say, listen, we've picked up some heart irregularities, nothing to worry about, but could you come in tomorrow? So, you know, that's where it's going. And a lot of other I always watch what the big guys are doing. So Alphabet is the parent company of Google. We all know. Alphabet is a $250 billion company. They have $250 billion in assets. That's 12 zeros. So billion is 9 zeros. They have 12 zeros. And they just said, right, let's buy Fitbit. That is an indication they're using their AI technology, the same kind of stuff that they use, so that when you put in bird in your list of photographs in your Google Drive, it'll pull up the bird pictures. It can also be integrated, and AI was mentioned previously. So look at what those big guys are doing. It indicates that that's where the sector is moving, end-to-end solutions of diagnostics or therapeutics integrated with human beings and integrated with the healthcare system, so that you don't have to worry. You develop the condition, but there's a whole suite solutions provided. You don't have to pick and choose and so on. So to finish up, and I do seem to be reasonably on time, I'm sure Ava is quite pleased with that. Some take-home points. Obviously, my career path has been a little bit kind of sporadic and unplanned, so I probably should have planned better. The more observant of you might kind of say that. I would suggest that people have a core science strength, but also adaptability. Don't think they're going to stay as a chemist or a microbiologist or whatever for your life. You're very unlikely. Learn how to work in teams. I mean, the guys have worked as a team to pull this together and done a truly amazing job. And make sure you contribute to the team, that you're a valued member. Stay in contact, particularly for the undergrads out there. You know, make friends, but stay in contact as well, because you never know. The people that you know and people that I went to college with now are in quite important roles in different aspects of health and that around the country. Some of them are insurance, some of them are in banking. They've gone lots of different ways. Find mentors, ask people. People love to be asked. It makes them feel very important to you know, be asked to play a part in your life and so on. And you know, some people just go through college and graduate, take a bit of paper and then kind of move on. Try and leave a mark in the college, try and have an interaction. That can be very important, as I said, when you maybe don't realize later on after that. Get as broad a training as you can, not just in science, other areas, particularly communication, things like career management was very important for me. So identify some of these other things that you maybe get a chance and an opportunity to do. You will likely need a PhD in this area, particularly if you're going to contribute on an intellectual level. That is just a requisite, and that is where academic things have moved at this stage. Invest in your networks, as I said. Remember the human side of what you do. And for example, in my space, when I started out, I would have thought of cancer as just mutated cells. It's not. It is a whole of human being condition. Learn to communicate to humans, not just scientists. So the people who are most successful at getting grants and funding and support are the people who can talk to others, not just to scientists and that. And as I said, it can be a bit of a roller coaster, and hopefully kind of see the landscape picture there. This was me, actually. I had a good fortune before COVID of being over in Alaska, and I suppose that's sort of the landscape that I'm trying to project. So my last slide is this one, a bit of a sci-fi one, and those of you who might be sci-fi nerds as well might know this film, and The Martian. So Matt Damon here is saying, you know, I'm going to have to science the shit out of this. I'm saying we're going to have to research the shit out of this. That is where our solutions lie in our future and in overcoming the problems in healthcare. So that is me. I'm very happy to take questions. I can't really see them, so Ava, you'll have to prompt me if that's okay.
Yeah, that's perfect, Rob. And thanks so much for that. Really insightful. And I think probably one of the things that you touched on there quite frequently is just that increased patient interaction that is so desperately needed in translational medicine. And I know that Ruth earlier touched on it as well. And hopefully we will see it more in the future. And I can see from the Irish Cancer Society's work that it really is such a fundamental process in your work. So well done in that, I suppose. And I will start off the questions there now. So I have one question that was sent in earlier that was quite interesting, and it is, what is the best advice for networking and building strong connections in the medical field?
I suppose, firstly, don't ignore your own connections that you have, even with the folks kind of around you. And I suppose it depends on what stage of your career you're at. And people engage in professional interactions usually when there's mutual benefit. So some things might be, for example, you know, when you have some research, whatever, going to conferences and engaging from that level. Identifying, most doctors are accessible now either through their secretaries or their email addresses on the web, because they're all affiliated with universities. So if you have something, don't feel shy about, you know, dropping folks an email. And indeed, that's how Martin and myself got in contact with John Crown. It was literally a cold call. John was relatively freshly back from the States. And as it happened, we caught him at a good time. And then obviously I was in meetings and meeting with other clinicians over time. So I think those things, so, you know, make use of your own network, make use of other people's network actually as well. Attend meetings, you know, show your wares, show your products, show what you're doing, and don't be afraid to cold call folks as well. The worst they can do is just not answer you, and like that shouldn't upset anybody.
Brilliant. I have a more personalized question here as well, which is quite interesting. And it is, how did you transition from working with cells to working with doctors and patients? I am doing my PhD in bioinformatics, studying Parkinson's, and I want to be more involved with real people.
Okay, I suppose I went about it in the wrong way, because at the time, really, we didn't engage patients in research. So, you know, this was 95 to 2000 and a little bit after that. There are patient groups, for example, who love to hear from researchers. They're only too happy to hear even some quite distant research. They just love to hear that somebody finds their condition of interest and of relevance. You can talk to people. I would be very surprised if you don't know in your extended sort of social network people who are impacted by, you know, the kind of common conditions like neurodegenerative disease, cardiac disease, cancer, etc. And then again, as I said, you know, you always have the kind of the cold call option that maybe you identify somebody. Social media is a great way to kind of break down barriers, and not a lot of scientists are very active on that, but a lot of people affected by conditions are also on it. And again, they love to hear, they love to try and contextualize what is going on, what does something mean, because the media can sometimes intentionally or accidentally misrepresent progress and stuff like that. So maybe some solutions there, and most of the charities now have good networks into patients and that. So that might be one route, to maybe make contact with the charity and just openly say, listen, you know, I want to learn more, I want to talk more. People love to feel that they're important. So a researcher making contact with them really says that, like, this is important, this is something I want to do. But it takes time. It takes time to build up those bonds and those relationships.
Perfect. A very good question as well. So thanks a million for answering that. And then we might have time for just one more quick question. And I think this is quite interesting. So have these unplanned career changes scared you, or have they been an exciting part of your life?
It depends which side of it you look at. So certainly on the going into side, certainly there are scares, and you don't know what way things are going to go. I suppose I have a few different kind of career options as well, because I would have done quite a bit on biosafety, bioterrorism, and you know, a few other things like that as well that I probably could have gone into too. So I suppose I always tried to jump from one thing to another, where some people were willing to take the risk. I'm reasonably risk averse. Some people were willing to take the risk and, for example, set up their own businesses, or, you know, things like that. So certainly there was kind of trepidation, and my move, for example, after 25 years out of the academic environment into a charity was certainly one that I thought long and hard about, and I think the charity thought long and hard about too. So yeah, I mean, there's always kind of trepidation with something. But we get through, you know, we all do, and we look back and it looks so logical on the other side of things. It's like, you know, picking a car or anything else. But I suppose it is important, and when I'm talking to people like this, I kind of use a sort of a balloon analogy. You can let a balloon up and just let it waft away and do nothing, or you can fly it a bit like a hot air balloon, where you know, you do your homework, you check, and you pick your altitude, so you know which direction the wind is kind of going to go. It doesn't guarantee exactly where you're going to go, but you pick where you are to set yourself in the right direction for the things that you want to do. Many scientists, you know, maybe don't like the pipettes and the Gilson side of things, and there's nothing wrong with that. So you get yourself into a situation where you're not dependent on using pipettes and Gilsons, etc. All the time. Or conversely, some people are much happier with that. Just try and get yourself into that frame, keep your eyes open, and follow your gut.
Brilliant. And I think that's a brilliant piece of advice as well for any undergrad students that are watching this here today. So just, I'd say we'll have to wrap it up at that. But thank you so much again, Rob, for being here with us today, and to also for all of your encouragement and your enthusiasm. It hasn't gone unnoticed, and we really appreciate all the help that you've given us thus far. So
Fantastic.
Thanks so much.
And thanks again. Good luck, everybody. Stay safe, and please God, we'll see this bigger and better even next year.
Brilliant.
Bye
Thanks
now.
a million. Bye.